two,
Three,
two,
two,
one.
one.
Projector eyes.
Projector eyes.
Projector eyes.
Projector eyes.
The Projector Eyes podcast with Travis Day.
I knew that relationship had to end for different reasons. One of the reasons is I am not ready to have children. I don't know if I want to have kids, and she was very much ready. So that it's like, okay, you can't reconcile that.
Yeah.
I did see a lot of my own shit come up of what went on in our relationship. My unwillingness to be vulnerable emotionally and to go to emotional depths with her really came up. So what I've really seen through that relationship was it was really a period of my life where I had to learn about emotions. And I had to learn and my excuse in human design was like, I'm not emotional. I have an open solar plexus. So I'm just more cool and cold. And what I saw was actually with an open solar plexus, you are designed to go deeper or at least meet the depths of the emotional person, of the emotional frequency. I'm just more sensitive to it and open to it. It's not consistent for me, but wow, is it my purpose to be able to match and travel to those depths? And it just requires a vulnerability and I'm so avoidant. So
Yeah. Well, I knew that. I'm so glad that you're seeing that. And yeah, and seeing, I love that reframe because I think it's so easy to, I'm curious if we'll talk about this in the podcast, but it's so easy to have human design or astrology or whatever, be a justification to not go somewhere or not explore something. And how can we allow it to be an invitation to deepen, yes, within our design, but not have it be to deprive us of some sort of depth or enable our avoidance or our anxiousness or whatever our pattern is. Yeah, I think that's a common thing. It's oh, okay, if I never have to initiate, then I never have to initiate anything in my life. And it's just not true, but anyway, yeah, I love that.
It's so interesting to see how clever and sneaky our mind is and our fear is.
Yes.
And it will take any piece of information and manipulate it unconsciously to sabotage yourself.
Yes, and to keep us safe.
Yeah, keep us safe. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, the journey continues.
Yes. Where are you at? What are you up to?
With dating, I went to a dating event last week or this week, and it was really good. And I'm really practicing just being super open and in my radiance and receptive and fun. And it was great. I wasn't interested in anyone, but 4 men asked to stay connected and 2 asked me out. And I actually wrote a post right before this as that's what I was finishing and sending a message about, but about turning men down because I just feel so uncomfortable with it. And it's my own fear of rejection. And so, yeah, practicing saying no because when I'm a clear no, and then also staying open because what am I being too picky? But sometimes I can just tell it's a no.
Yeah.
But I also have really, a lot of preferences and a lot of things that I want and am I limiting myself? So anyway, I'm going to 2 dating events this week. And I'm excited for that because I really like being at events versus being on dating apps because I just like being out and being with people and connecting. So I feel very abundant in that. I'm wow, I went to that. I went to an open mic night last night. Oh yeah, you saw my story. That was really fun. Thank you. And that was just fun. And it was obviously co-ed. And I like just being around people and their creativity and talking to people. And I'm just going to more things. And that's what feels good. Just being intentional about connecting in Austin and going to things and just being around men. Yeah. So that's it. Yeah. But definitely want to meet my partner this year.
You feel it coming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel him coming towards me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've felt that for a while. So I'm I feel a level of trust that he is close and also a willingness to wait and I met a woman. I did ISTA level 2 in
I
Bali.
saw that.
Yeah, it was amazing. Intense and amazing. And I met this man there that was like so representative of what I want in a partner. And he was
Uh,
there with his partner.
mm,
And I really received him like the whole week. I like
mm,
felt his power and his presence and like his penetration and his embodiment and his practice and his devotion to his partner. And it's
mm,
just so much that I was like, wow, really moved by, really impacted by, and
mm,
recognized that I want that frequency in my partnership.
mm,
And I got to thank him and like really reflect that to him and acknowledge him and appreciate him for that. And like also her, and share with her how I felt impacted by her and her receptivity of him and their
mm,
dynamic. And she said, she was like, I waited 6 years. Like I was basically celibate for most of that. I dated a little
mm,
bit here and there within that, but I turned up a lot of amazing men to have this. And I just waited, and I was willing to be patient because I knew what I wanted, and I knew the frequency that I wanted in relationship, the
mm,
resonance that I wanted, and I was willing to wait. And that was inspiring to me, even though I was like, okay, I don't want to wait 6 years, but I was like, I basically have waited 6 years. Like I haven't been in love since Steven, and that was 5 years ago. So
wow.
I'm like, and I basically have been celibate for a lot of this. Like I
Yeah.
haven't had sex in a year and a half. And then before that, it's like I go through really long stages of like
Mm,
not having anyone. And like then I have like, I dated Jan for 5 months in Bali, and like I
yeah.
dated Alex for 3 months. But like between that, like I don't really have
Yeah.
anything. So it's actually very similar. Um and but it inspired me to just like stay
Mm,
in my like out of victim and in my
yeah.
sovereignty and in my own practice, and like working on myself and my own radiance and my own receptivity and my own sensuality, and just being really ready.
Mm.
And yeah, so I do feel he's close, and I do feel willing to wait.
I love that so
Yes.
much.
Yeah.
Isn't that the hardest thing
It
ever?
is.
Uh, for me, what's coming up is like I haven't had sex in like 5 months. This
That's a
is like a
lot for you.
long time for
Yeah.
me, and I've been like serial relationship person, or yeah, I guess it's more
Lovership
relationship,
or
but
situationship.
exactly. Um, but I think the more I find myself and the more like I decondition, the more I feel my own frequency, the less available I am for
Yeah.
or a situationship that isn't aligned. Like
Yes.
there's opportunity, but it's like it's really easy for me to hold that boundary now and be like, no, this does not feel like what I'm wanting in a partner, and I
Yeah.
don't have to go have experiences now
Totally.
to fill that void just because I feel so much more solid in myself.
So powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I relate to that. Yeah, more and more willing to just be with me until it's the right fit.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good. Should we get
Yeah.
going?
Yeah,
You
let's
want to
do
do
it.
you want to just introduce yourself and tell
Mhm.
everyone
Who I
your
am.
passionate path?
Yes, happy to. Let me just get this little. I never wear green. So
You
this
look
is
good in
a
green. I like
thank
that
you.
color.
Ellie and Robert really influenced me to wear less pink and like
Oh,
more
cool.
like rooted, grounded
Mm.
colors because it's like part of my maturation process. And so I'm like, fine, I will, but
Have you done your color
I
analysis?
haven't.
No.
I should do that, but I haven't. No, I actually don't know what's best on me, but I
Mm.
do I do like wearing green.
It looks good
Um,
with your dark hair too.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. That's what I've been feeling too. Um, okay. I think that's good. Yeah. Okay. So are you gonna intro me, like be
I
like
don't intro
welcome?
anymore. We're
You
just
don't.
gonna be talking, and I'm just
But
gonna
like, are you gonna say like this is Aimee, or like should I just literally start and be like
like
this
I
is who
may
I
use
am?
some of the conversation we already had,
Oh, great. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
if that's
sure.
okay with
Of
you.
course.
Yeah. Uh,
Blanket consent.
cool. I figured that would be the case
Yeah,
with
yeah,
you,
for
but
sure.
just I've just really been connecting with like what feels good and authentic for
Yeah.
me in my podcast and what I have
Good.
like major resistance around. And I've
Yeah.
always just felt awkward and like
Yes.
weird introducing someone.
Well, I just want
Uh,
you to talk about me because you love me.
I, you know how much I love you. I haven't seen you in so long, but like the love that I have for you, I talk about you all the time,
Oh,
literally all the time.
really?
And I've kicked up my own practice for the last like 3 months too
Have
with this.
you?
Yes, with this
Oh,
amazing woman. It's been life changing and
oh
like,
my God.
yeah, it's been really life changing. So I talk about
Wow.
you constantly.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
thank you. I love hearing that. I feel happy. And I also feel really inspired. I'm like, gosh, I have not been oming at all. I barely owned in the last 4 years, but I did
Mm.
start oming like a couple months ago.
Oh, you
I
did.
owned a few times here and it felt really good. I was like, wow, I'm
Mm.
like reconnecting my body, reconnecting to my eros and like allowing that energy to
Yeah.
move. And it felt good. But then the guy that I was oming with moved.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm just
Wow.
like I could be more intentional and like figure it out and find someone, but I just haven't, like it hasn't been that convenient. So I just
Yeah.
haven't done that. But I'm
Yeah.
inspired.
Yeah. It came together so just aligned and
Mm,
convenient, and we just clicked immediately. And it's been like a really awesome exploration with
wow.
this woman. Yeah.
Okay. Well, great.
Yeah. Which
Okay.
you turned me on to. I love telling that story too.
I know. I love it
For two
too.
years, I would not go to this thing. And
Yeah.
you,
Well,
yeah,
it's actually good because that makes it more like relatable and also like
yeah,
credible that you like, it's
totally.
like you first, well, same. And I first resisted it majorly. It was like,
Yeah.
what the fuck is this? So, okay. So do you want me to just go and share
Who
about myself?
who are you?
Hmm.
That's the projector question for the manifesting generator.
Such a good question because I'm in such a massive metamorphosis right now in my life
Yes.
that I'm like, who am I? Um, wait, I think I might be in a squeaky chair. Sorry. Hold on.
I love that chair.
Thank you. I have two of them and I'm just
Mm.
seeing which one. I think this one's less squeaky. So let me just replace it. Okay. Even if I'm wearing less pink, there's not less pink around.
Well, then it just makes you pop. You're not
I love
blending
pink.
into the
Yeah,
background.
exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
good. This is not squeaky.
Yeah.
Okay. Just getting cozy. I have two different camera angles. Okay. So
You need a
who
t-shirt.
am I? I am, yeah, because I'm letting, such a big part of my journey has been of my path has been like doing things that are impressive.
Mm.
And I'm letting I don't want to say I'm letting that part of me die because I want to still allow for her to be here and love her. It's like more about integrating her and allowing for her to be there, but not having her run the show or like
Mm.
lead my life. So I'm like, okay, who am I without needing to
Mm.
impress you? I'm wearing jeans, which is so weird. Okay. So
Well, I would really want to dive into that too.
yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am this is it's such a funny question right now in my life. Okay, so I am I have a business called Desire on Fire, and my business partner Ellie and I run it together. I'm in our Desire on Fire office right now in Austin, Texas. And we lead retreats and programs in person and online for women mostly, although we just started getting into men's work and have our first men's program running right now called the King's
Amazing.
Code. Yeah, it's amazing that Ellie's husband, Rob, is leading with a couple of other incredible facilitators. And we're starting co-ed work at the end of this year. And yeah, it's really exciting how the company and our work is evolving. But we have served women for the last 5 years around intimacy, relationships, deep soul aligned sisterhood, and having hot, harmonious relationships with men. And yeah, learning to respect and revere the masculine and be receptive to men in the masculine while also staying connected to ourselves, our truth, our desire, our intuition, letting that run and lead our lives. And yeah, it's so fun. And it's interesting because I'm like, when you first asked, I was like, who am I? My name's Aimee. I'm from Orono, Maine. I'm a small town girl living in a medium-sized city now in Texas, which is so unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had so many different stages and phases of my life, and you've been present for many of them in the last, gosh, like 8 or 9 years that we've been friends. And yeah, and in the last 8 or 9 months of my life, I've been majorly transforming and letting go of the part of me that needs to achieve and look good and be really successful to feel like valid and worthy and lovable. And how can I keep serving and keep um like making a difference in the world in a way that lights me up without needing to like be better than last year or
Mm.
look better than last year or like have bigger numbers or bigger income or like reach more people, because those were like the benchmarks for success or for me to feel like I was doing well and like even better comparing myself to the year before. And
Yeah.
I'm letting go of that and like
Mm.
facing my fear of failure and my fear of losing love and all of that in the process. And it's been intense and also really beautiful. That's
I
me.
love you.
Just a little bit.
What is it in you that has you like fired up and committed to this path of growth? Because that is something that I'm so inspired by in you. It's like no matter what, you're just in and you're willing to do the things that scare you. You're willing to talk. You're so open and vulnerable. Like
Mm.
what have you gotten that keeps you committed to this path?
That is a great question. And I am curious, like, because I'm deconstructing so much of myself right now, I'm like, okay, how much of it is just like my dharma? It's like my soul's contract in this lifetime to do this work
Mm.
and to spread this work. How much is it my, nature versus nurture? How much of it is my upbringing, which I'll share about? And how much is like some need to like, this is just what I've learned will like
Mhm.
have me feel impactful and successful and like lovable and worthy. And like, is that the root of it? And just being in a deeper inquiry with myself has been really powerful, because before I would have like, I'm not going to even look at that. No, of course it's my dharma. Of course it's just what I should be doing. And I do feel that deeply, but I'm willing to look at like, what are the layers and what are the motivations and
Yeah.
what's the, what is it that drives me, so that it isn't coming from a place of filling some void or needing to get
Yeah.
some outcome, but from genuine service and desire.
Yeah.
So I think my upbringing has a big part in this. My parents met at Landmark. They met in a personal development program. They really normalized personal growth work, healing work, transformation as a high value in our home, and that's very unusual for a lot of people. I've like talked about this in the past and talked about how like my friends would have, their families might have like nice cars, or they might have like they might renovate their kitchen or something. And like my family had one car, my parents shared a car. They never renovated anything in my house my whole life. And, it was just not the value, right? Those were not their values. And they really valued growth and transformation. And basically an attitude of you can do anything you want. You can create and have and do anything you want. And sharing transformation is important. It's not something to just hold on to, that we have like sharing it with people and letting people have access to these paradigm shifting ideas and philosophies and modalities is so important to like serve and give and like give back in the world. So yeah, that's been really instilled in me since like a very young age. So I think that's definitely part of it. And because I feel so much true inspiration from it. Ellie and I talk about this, and we've shared about this at different times in our work and with our clients, probably in interviews, but like, I am, for better or worse, not very motivated by money. And even though I appreciate money and I want to have money, of course, like I value abundance and prosperity, and I want to be able to like live my life and have a nice home and home environment and travel, and I can do all those things, and I do have all those things, but money is not my motivation. My motivation in our work is transformation and like really standing for people to have the relationships that they want, the sex that they want, the intimacy they desire, and feeling free and at home and alive in their bodies and connected to their intimate romantic partners and deep in community and sisterhood. And like seen in that space. Like all of that is so satisfying to me. And to see our clients have that over and over again and share stories with us and send us messages and sharing like how beautiful this experience was and how respected their partner feels now. And, you know, how much they're listening and listening to their man and loving him and just totally trusting him now, and their sex is on fire, and like, you know, they're like feeling so much more harmony, and like just the sisterhood these women are experiencing, and that they can trust each other, and they're healing their wounds from high school. And it's just so inspiring. It's so inspiring to me, and that ultimately is the biggest motivation.
Yeah. Nothing like a lit up generator. I'm so inspired by your work, and I'm so appreciative in being a part of this path and learning from you and following you and you know, getting uncomfortable. When I look at the human design community and lots of spiritual communities, I think the one piece that we're missing, or not missing because it's not necessarily baked into everything, but one piece we don't really talk about a lot is the embodiment piece of it, and the sexuality and the desire. And I was thinking the other day, like, I'm oming again, I'm like back in this whole tantric like sacred sexual container and thinking about all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, we say generators are frustrated, like generators get frustrated. Generators are the majority of the planet, right? But in human design, we talk about like you need to respond, and then we talk about like work, like what work lights you up and stuff. But a lot of people don't talk about the sexual part of it, which is like you are the holders of the sacral, which is our sexuality, which is our desire, which is our availability for intimacy. And so thinking like, wow, how would you plan to control an entire population? You would just separate them from their sexual power, especially women. So when I look at your work and I hear the transformation in your clients and people, I'm just like, yes, this is so what the world is missing. And it's just so nice to see people doing that work.
Yeah, well, and I love that you're having these conversations, bringing it into the conversation of human design, and tying these things, you know, spirituality and human design and sexuality. And it is so missing from so many mainstream, you know, obviously for sure religious conversations, but even spiritual communities and different, you know, modalities and methodologies for understanding the world and reality and how we relate and how we communicate and express. And it often is a major missing piece, or it's like maybe touched on, but not at the depth that it could be. And so I really appreciate that you're bringing this, you know, into a more conscious conversation in the human design world.
I think that's so spot on, is like you do touch on it, but you do not go to the depths or give it the amount of attention that it deserves.
Totally.
So
It reminds me of you saying that. Reminds me of at Landmark, they had a sex and intimacy seminar, which I actually never took. Like it was like an 8-week or 12-week something seminar. And I never took it, but I was a guest one day for somebody else who was in it. And I went, and I just remember, and like, bless Landmark, you know, so appreciative. So appreciate what they bring, right? They so much value, and it's like one piece of the pie, right? One very valuable piece of the pie. And so, but it's just so funny because I remember just like, it was all about like the kind of concept of sex and relationship, and like the context that we hold and the stories that we have about it, which are valuable. It's an important conversation, addressing the stories and narratives that we hold around sex and relationships. But I was like, okay, when are we going to talk about penetration? You know, when are we going to talk about squirting and kink and taboo? Like, where's the conversation about anal here? You know, like it's like obviously not what was happening in that room, and it's totally fine. But it just it reminds me of what you're saying. It's like there may be like a layer of it just being spoken to, but there's, and not like the examples I just gave are everything, but there's just so much complexity and nuance to this realm.
How do you take people into those depths? Because part of the thing I'm struggling with right now is like I'm really being called to talk about it, and I've always gotten invitations to talk about relationship, but now that I'm really seeing the deeper layers of like, wow, well, generators really need to wake up and be satisfied, and that you have to have that conversation in order for that to actually come to fruition. But I'm like scared to say sex on Instagram. I'm scared to say orgasm. Like there's a fear in me that's been conditioned of like, this isn't okay. How do you how did you overcome that, and how do you take people to those depths?
Well, I think leading with that vulnerability about it is so key because it's like you also feel uncomfortable. You know, it reminds me of my mom. My mom said to me, I've talked to my mom over the years about how she parented us around sex and how she, because my parents really were dedicated to having like conscious educational conversations with us
Mm,
about sex growing up. And I'm very grateful for that because it's unique, it's unusual. And I remember her saying, like, sometimes we would have sex talks in the car because you guys couldn't escape and we couldn't escape. And it's like acknowledging when it is uncomfortable and
mm,
acknowledging like that we all feel awkward and somewhat uncomfortable and push our own comfort zone edges around this no matter what, no matter if we're on this side of the interview or
yeah,
the teaching space or that
yeah,
side, right? Like Ellie and I share so much in our teaching of like, this is where we are right now. Like we're in the
mm,
trenches with you. This is the fight we had yesterday, or this is my
mm,
fear of rejecting a guy who asked me out literally 2 days ago. And like here's what came up for me, and
mm,
here's what comes up in my self-pleasure practice, and here's where like I resist and push up against like trusting men and letting in their love, and where I try to overpower and compete
yeah,
with them, like in
yeah,
real time, sharing my
yeah,
patterns, my mechanisms, my fears and vulnerabilities in this space. And
mm,
I think you leading with your own discomfort around it, or your own like hesitation or fear of what might happen or how people might respond, or
mm,
whatever it
yeah,
is what makes you more relatable and credible,
yeah,
for talking about it. And I mean, I don't know if it's like just a fear of like getting banned or something, because we like shorten everything. We don't write sex, we write SX. Like we don't write
okay,
orgasm, we use like an at sign, and we use like a money
gotcha,
sign, and
and that
we do.
works?
It does. I mean, we've
Okay,
never been kicked off of social media like for talking about sexual related stuff.
yeah,
I know some people have, so it's definitely a risk, but
mm,
I think for the most part, like you can find ways to kind of, and you can also find ways to talk about it without having to say that. You can be like
totally,
intimacy. You can say like in the bedroom. You can say
yeah.
things without like constantly like blatantly saying
Doesn't that
um,
piss you off, though?
that we have to censor.
Yeah,
It does, but I also feel I feel reverence for, because a lot of people, are kind of in this like reactionary sort of activist energy of like, why
totally,
don't you let us like say what we want to say, and like we're sex educators. But I'm like, this is a tech company that like
mhm.
we're dealing with a tech company that doesn't want like porn on the site, right? I understand that. We don't want porn on Instagram. That's not what it's for. And I also understand them not wanting like targeting to minors, and like there
Mm,
are inappropriate things. Now, of course, do I want them to be able to discern and allow for like sex education and like empowering sexual content to be there? Sure. And it's a tech company. Like I
yeah,
also understand, and I hope that they can get, wiser and clearer, that they can like differentiate and discern more. But I don't feel like resentment and
I
blame.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just like, what's the point? Like
there's
I
no point.
understand.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's so easy to switch into they're doing it on purpose, or there's,
Mhm.
which I mean, I I don't know. I can go down those rabbit holes
Totally.
as well. Um, but
There's
it
just
does
not
not
usually a
serve
lot of
me or my message or
right.
my ability to yeah, be able to express on there.
Yeah, and just like, what game do you wanna play? Like,
Yeah,
if this is the hand that we're dealt, like, this is what we're working with, this
totally.
is the platform we're working. Because a lot of people are like, "Fuck Facebook and Instagram, they're censoring us, da, da, da," and I'm just like, "No, I wanna use Facebook and Instagram."
Yeah,
Like, they wanna,
yeah,
like, go to other platforms, and I'm like, "The
yeah,
reality is this is what people use, and so, like,
yeah,
let's just work with it." Like, let's not be
yeah.
disempowered and go into victim. Let's be challengers and creators and coaches, and,
Mm,
like, if I'm using the reference of the victim triangle, the drama triangle, it's like the empowered, exalted side is like coach, challenger, creator. So it's like, instead of being a victim or a rescuer or a persecutor, can we
mm,
like be in the exalted frame of that
mm,
triangle and switch into coach, creator, or challenger? It's like, okay, how can I challenge this without being like rebellious and have to like be such an activist, like make sure it
mm,
changes immediately? I know people are fighting that fight. I'm grateful, but like
yeah,
I'm not doing that. I'm going to do
yeah,
something else.
yeah.
Yeah. And just work with what I got and like make the most of it.
Yeah. I always tell people, like, if it's exciting you and lighting you up and you're satisfied in that role, then like by all means argue and active, be the activist and
Right.
all of that. But if it's bringing you the disappointment and the bitterness and the frustration, then that's the sign like, hey, your medicine is elsewhere.
That's it.
Your energy is going to be used in a way more efficient, empowering way somewhere else.
Yeah, I so feel
Yeah.
that. And I used to be an activist in a million ways. And I, as you know, and yeah, and I'm really not now.
Mm,
I'm really not. I mean, my activism is just in my
your
embodiment.
message. Yeah.
Yeah, in my embodiment and my message and what I teach through empowering women to love
Mm,
themselves and their body and each other and men. And
mm,
so, but it has a different frequency because I think there
yeah.
is an energy of like fight in activism,
Yeah.
which I think there is a time and a place for sure.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time it's not the thing that's
Yeah.
needed. And
Yeah.
so it's like overly defaulted to.
Mm,
And it's just not something that I want to be practicing. I want to practice a different way and see how we can make change in a different way. That's more
yeah.
around love and compassion and welcoming
Yeah.
than like pushing against what isn't working.
It makes me think of intimacy, and I think about this word all the time now of like, I really believe our purpose is intimacy in every situation, authentically with
Hmm.
other people, with our work, with, whatever it is.
Yes.
And when I look at activism that's like lashing out and being that way, it's such an easy way to avoid being intimate with anything. It's
Yes.
just a fight, and you don't have to be vulnerable. When you do it from your position, it's so much more attractive, and it's bringing people in, which requires a space of vulnerability and intimacy.
Yeah. Oh my God. And it's so much more vulnerable to be
Yeah.
like, oh, it's like an open-hearted, like welcoming
Yeah.
energy versus like a pushing against and fighting and like dominating and power
Mm,
over, which
yeah.
is so the norm in our world. And it's actually the masculine versus the feminine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the masculine isn't necessarily power over, but it's like power. It can be force. It can be force for good. It can
Mhm.
be force for evil, right? But it's like, uh, creation and doing and like action and building and can be force and it can be pressure when needed and all of that. And then the feminine is more, receptive, magnetic and radiant and
Mhm.
allowing in and calling in, welcoming in, and also can be nurturing. It also can be, of course, warrior, and it can be the ocean and all of that. Like there's so
Yeah.
many flavors of it, but generally it's the more receptive energy versus like
Yeah.
actively penetrative. And that's a whole journey that I've been on because my default is being so penetrative, which I've
Mm,
learned is part of my genius. It's something that I can do well, but I'm like, how much of that is a protective mechanism? Because I think I
mm,
have to in order to get my voice across or in order to be seen or received. And can I actually trust my more quiet,
mm,
soft, radiant, receptive, magnetic nature
mm.
and allow that to be just as powerful?
One
Yeah.
topic that you've been talking a lot about that's been present for me. I had a experience recently where someone reached out for a reading, and they were
Mhm.
very upfront with their distrust for men, their kind of
Mhm.
hatred towards men. She was
Mhm.
very shocked that she even felt resonant to do work with me because of these views and feelings that she has towards men. One of the things you teach is your love for men, which I
Mhm.
absolutely love because you don't see that very
Yeah.
often. It's almost controversial
It
in
is.
spaces. Talk about that. What is that?
Oh my God, it's interesting. And it's such a blind spot, and it was a blind spot for me too, so I have a lot of compassion for it. I always thought I liked men. I mean, I never experienced myself as hating men. That wasn't a way I identified. I didn't feel that way about myself. I always had good guy friends through, elementary school, middle school, high school,
Mm,
college. I have a great relationship with my dad. So it wasn't like I had this like overt, hatred towards men, which some people have. Um, I think what's more common is a subtle hatred
mm,
towards men or a subtle distrust and kind of competition and feeling like I need to be better than and to punish men
mm,
for the pain from the past that we've experienced as women at the hands of men. And I'm not denying or negating any of that. There has, of course, been collectively and personally for many people
mm,
pain, trauma, hurt at the hands of men. There's also been a lot of pain, trauma, and hurt at the hands of women towards men, not necessarily physically, but like
mm.
the pain that we can also cause towards men is massive. And we
Yeah.
diminish our own impact that,
Mm,
like, oh, we're not as big and strong as men, and we're less of likely to be the abusers or the murderers or all sorts of things statistically. But like that does not diminish our power as
mm,
women to cut to cut down other people, to cut down men,
mm,
to be so dismissive, disrespectful. Yeah, like just there's so much that we can do in our power. And also the opposite is true, to build men up and let men know that they're loved and trusted, and that we see them and appreciate them for their brilliance. And it's interesting because, there's a cultural conversation and narrative around toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And, I'm not dismissing that there are patterns within each of us that can be toxic or unhealthy or impactful in a way that's not supportive, generative, loving, right? But what Ellie just posted a reel the other day about how she feels sad that there aren't about the narrative of toxic masculinity, essentially, because she's raising a boy and really wanting to, I don't remember exactly how she said it, but wanting to essentially enable a conversation around how masculinity is powerful and beautiful and needed, and people are commenting on it what? That's not what we think. That's not the truth. That's obviously not what people are saying, because it seriously is. Let me see if I can break this down. It's people think that we're not calling masculinity toxic. We're just talking about how men exhibit toxic masculinity, but that's just a little category. But what they don't get, if you can track this, I know this is I'm trying to explain this, but what people don't get is that most of what we are demonizing and putting into the category of toxic masculinity, when seen and appreciated and in healthy balance from the man and received from people and women, is masculinity, is just healthy masculinity. For example, dominance, assertiveness. Now, I'm not saying this is the only way to be masculine, but this is just some of the qualities, right? It's assertiveness, dominance, leadership, for example, right? Now, people so easily will see an example of masculine dominance or masculine assertiveness or even aggression, right? Your inner warrior, right? Your inner aggressor, your soldier that lives inside of every man, Do you know the bear versus man thing that's going around on the internet right now?
No, I don't.
Okay. So this is this is exactly what we're talking about.
Okay.
There's a whole thing happening on the internet right now. It was an interview, and it was a reel that went viral, and it's a guy, I don't know if it was a guy or a girl who was interviewing, but interviewing people saying, would you rather be in the woods with alone in the woods with a man or a bear? And every woman says bear. I'd rather be in the woods alone with a bear than a man. Okay. And who knows that they did interview some women that said man, but they didn't make the cut into this reel.
There was a clear message they were going for here.
Absolutely. But I also think it's often the case because so many women have experienced pain and trauma in their relationships with men and also don't see their part in that. So it's easy to just blame the man blatantly for his part. And yes, I'm not dismissing that he probably has his own patterns and stuff that needs to be healed, but we got our own part in it. We have our own patterns and mechanisms that play into co-creating unhealthy or toxic, patterns in relationship. So anyway, I was talking to my girlfriends about this. I had friends over yesterday, and all my friends that I hang out with love men, love, respect, and revere men. We all have a real commitment and devotion to the masculine, and it's unique. And so we were talking about it, and one of my girlfriends talked about this, and she's like, I would definitely want to be in the woods with my man, fiercely protecting me and willing to fight and bring out his aggressor to kill a bear who might be threatening me. Right. And it's healthy aggression. Yeah. Healthy integrated aggression is hot. It is powerful. It is needed, right? It's the protector in a man. Yeah. Healthy integrated dominance is super hot, right? So many women want that in the bedroom, but then when they see dominance in the world, they're like, it's toxic. Don't tell me what to do. And so this is a long-winded answer, but I'm actually, yes, of course, we all need to do our work to have healthy, integrated, expressions of these different qualities. But what's our part as women in letting men, loving their aggressor inside that also is their protector, their advocate, their fierceness that would protect us if there was a threat, and letting men be in their leadership, letting men be assertive, letting men be, the provider in ways that men sometimes want to provide in ways that we're I can do it myself. right? Completely dismissed. Like, why are you even trying to open the door for me?
Mhm. Yeah.
It's like, okay, who's the problem here? You know?
Yeah.
I hope that made sense, because I kind of went,
It
it's kind of hard
No,
to
it totally
explain it,
does.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a real issue, and people really want to
Yeah.
just blame men and
Yeah.
masculinity as the problem, instead of
Yes.
looking at what's healthy and beautiful about
Yeah.
masculinity, that we can celebrate and support men in integrating and be healthy and
Yeah.
thriving. And then how can we as women be in our feminine and be in receptivity and gratitude and reverence, and actually
Yeah.
allow that out, so it doesn't come out in like aggressive, toxic, unhealthy ways, but
Yeah.
actually is celebrated and gets to be deepened and actually brought out in ways that are protective and generative for society.
It seems so generational and so old, the story that we hold with each other, and especially the blame for men. And when I look at men in my own personal experience, like, we are so um not in our well, that's not a good way to say it. We are hurting in this
Mhm,
patriarchy as well, or in the way we've set up society. Men
mhm.
may seem or appear to be in a different position, but like deep down, I think men are going through so much pain and loneliness and suffering in their own masculine. So to blame like
Absolutely.
this generation, it doesn't to me, it doesn't make any sense, because I see men as needing so much help
Yes.
needing to get in touch. And one of those things I think that we've lost is like these like initiating ceremony or
Yes.
experience. Like, I went through one recently for me where it was like, you have not been a man. You need to go through this initiation so that you can understand what it even means. I was
Yes.
not taught what it meant to be a man. I
No.
wasn't. We didn't have those conversations, and so I just think like the blame is definitely in the wrong place.
It is. I mean, we're all lacking in education and
Yeah.
initiatory experiences to
Yeah.
have us be in mature psychology. This is something I'm so grateful for, our new men's program, the King's Code, and Rob, Ellie's husband, leading it, because that's what this is about. The whole
Mm.
program is about men going from immature
Mhm.
psychology into mature psychology, from
Mm.
boy psychology to man psychology. And our society does not support that. And so we
Mhm.
have a lot of men running things in the world from
Yeah.
boy psychology,
Yeah.
right? Running countries, running companies, running governments, running businesses, not even blame. I'm not blaming them. It's like
Yeah.
they
They
are
don't know.
lacking, because our culture is lacking in
Yeah.
these initiatory experiences, and in truth telling community and brotherhood and sisterhood, and like really taking a closer look at ourselves, and
Mm.
being willing to do the inner work and go through these rites of passage, and like
Yeah.
really face ourselves and our discomfort and like our identity and our ego, and this is what we guide women through at major initiatory experiences. And
Yeah.
this is what really good men's work does as well. And certainly there's co-ed work that does similar things
Yeah.
too, but I think a lot of it does need to be done separately, because we have to face ourselves as
Yeah.
men and as women in exactly what you're pointing to, and
Yeah.
all the stuff that is we're so blind to, because it's the norm in our culture.
Yeah. What did it like, when did you have that shift in your perspective? And what has it done for you in your life?
Oh my God, it's around men,
Yeah.
around loving men. Yeah.
Yeah.
It it certainly wasn't overnight. It's been years. It's taken years, because I grew up in a very, feminist home,
Mm.
super, super like liberal, progressive feminist. My mom was a lawyer for 30 years,
Mm.
really like advocating for this stuff. Um, and what I have learned is, and I was really grateful for that. Like, I was raised in a very loving home and a very accepting home. But what I also realized, like, it was like, love, and everyone can love whoever they love, and everyone deserves to have rights, and like things that I value. Right.
Yeah.
But also, in recent years, I've learned the shadow of feminism, right? I've learned the shadow of these different, perspectives and movements of, where there's man hating inside the feminist, movement, and not super overtly either.
Mm.
Sometimes it is overt and sometimes it's not, but there's like an energy of we're better than men, or we need to punish men, or we need to prove ourselves that we get to be the same as men. And actually, there's been part of the shadow of the feminist movement I found, and not just feminism, but also similar movements and empowerment of women has actually not been empowering towards being a woman. It's been empowering us to be more like men. And so I had a lot of great qualities of a man. I could like achieve and be assertive, and definitely had some aggression in there, and I could get things done and be, successful and efficient and like drive and push and all these things. And I'm grateful to have that. Like my inner masculine is like dialed, but it was like far too, like I was far too much on that side of the pendulum. And so it's been a real journey to release some of my conditioning. Like I need to be like men. I need to be the same as men. I need to be equal to men. I actually, like, a big part of this healing has been allowing men to be above me. Like energetically putting men above me, which I never would have allowed or considered when I needed everything to be equal. Right. It was like, I need to be equal to a man. We need to have equal rights and equal place and doing equal things in the home, and like equal division of labor, and like equal. And what a lot of people don't realize is that our attachment to equality absolutely kills eros, absolutely kills intimacy, because we're not seeing how much men do. It's like there's a huge narrative and conversation around like men needing to be more available at home, and like equal to women at home, and equal division of chores, and equal division. And certainly I want men to be, I want women and men to feel like supported and to have cohesion at home, and like, absolutely. But it's not acknowledging how much men do out of the house. Busting their butts, creating things in the world, and like bringing home the bacon in many homes, and like doing, providing and working, like freaking working. I think about electricians and plumbers and fucking garage, like, garbage men. I'm like, thank you, men. I feel so grateful seeing these men that literally keep our roads, clean, and keep our electricity running, and our plumbing working. And I'm like, we have to be in appreciation and gratitude for how much, because that is generally men. I mean, we got to be real about it. That is men. That is what those are men out there doing a lot of that work, majority of it. And I'm so grateful for it. And that is completely stepped over. That is completely forgotten about, dismissed. It's like, of course they are. They should be. Like the entitlement, the expectation, the demand, and the lack of appreciation and gratitude and receptivity of how much men do in the world that we don't even notice, that we don't even see. So well, I didn't even answer your question, but
no, it's like we don't want to see our differences. People are so scared of difference now. It's like everything has to be the same, and it's like nothing is the same. Like there's a beautiful polarity in these energies. So when we're when women are trying to be men, it's not gonna work, and you're gonna,
it's not, and it just creates it creates like butting heads, and it creates it's like two magnets, when they're all the same poles, repel, right? We know. So it either creates repelling energy, or it defaults the other person to be the other pole, right? Which is then women are holding the masculine pole, and then it's defaulting men to be in the feminine pole, and then women are resentful. They're like, why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you protecting me? Why aren't you providing for me? Why aren't you giving me more? Why aren't you wanting to fuck me? Why aren't you wanting to do this, and this? Why aren't you like more assertive and attentive, and like more successful and achieving and like driven? And it's like, are you inspiring that? Are we inspiring that? Are we allowing them to be? Or are we just defaulting to our own masculine and resenting them for not holding the same pole in the same house?
That makes so much sense.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is me saying from experience, because I would so default to my masculine, so default to my protective mechanisms of not being vulnerable and leading with like judgment and leading with direction. And, I would just be leading instead of receiving and trusting
Yeah.
and sharing my heart and sharing my sadness or my fear or my desire or my,
Yeah.
excitement about something to my man, and then letting him feel inspired to,
Yeah.
do something with that, and whether it be hold
Yeah.
space for me and love me and hold me or fuck me, or whether it be like give me some beautiful experience or take me out to dinner or like bring me out to the backyard for a walk or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't allowing men's leadership because I was too afraid to trust it. And so I needed to stay in the lead
Mm.
in order to feel safe, which comes from my mom and her mom and my maternal lineage of women feeling betrayed by men,
Yeah.
and my grandmother being left by my grandfather and with 5 kids, and just the pain of that, and the how challenging that was, and how betrayed she felt and how abandoned she felt, and then the distrust, like the shield, the
Mm.
armor, the sword that needed to
Totally.
come out in order to survive that.
Yeah.
But I wasn't there, but now I feel so much compassion for my grandfather. I'm like, what was he going through? How receptive was my grandmother? How much did she trust him? Allow him to be himself, allow him to take the lead and provide for their family? Or how much was she demanding and entitled and expectant and disrespectful and mean and probably just diminishing him.
Yeah.
And it's so normal in our culture. And I'm like, of course it was painful for him to leave, but we would just look at that from an outside perspective and be like, wow, what a dick. He abandoned her.
Yeah.
Instead of like, what was going on between them interpersonally? What was
Yeah.
her part? What was his part? And he probably had a reason to leave.
Mm.
He probably had many reasons to leave, even though I'm sure it was incredibly painful for him to choose that ultimately. So it's been a very intense healing process for me, to say the least, to healing my whole maternal line of trauma and
Mhm.
learning to trust and open to men and see them as worthy of leading me and loving me and giving to me, and that I'm worthy of being led,
Mhm.
that I'm worthy of being soft and receptive and
Mhm.
delighted and to ask for help and to get it.
Yeah.
That I don't have to do it all myself, that I don't
Mhm.
have to answer everything and know all the answers and figure it all out myself, which is exhausting. And then I can call up men in my life. I'm not in a relationship right now. And I'm like, there's so many men in my life that still want to protect and provide for me.
Mhm.
I just have to ask. I just have to open. I just have to be receptive to it and let them know that I need them.
Mhm.
I have to be willing to show my weakness. And this is a big thing because so many women don't want to reveal their
Mhm.
weakness, including myself. I didn't want to be weak. I didn't want you to know that I needed help. I didn't want
Mhm.
you to know that I didn't know the answer. But that is absolutely required in order to be led,
Mhm.
contributed to, guided, provided for. Otherwise, we just got it all figured out and handled ourselves. And it's like, what's the point of having a man? A man doesn't even feel needed.
Mhm. There's conversations I've had and things I see. First of all, I just think we're missing each other. We're just missing each other.
We
That's
are.
it. And so then there's blame on both sides. And then okay, how do you heal that? So I've heard women say like, I don't feel safe. He doesn't make me feel safe, so therefore I can't then be vulnerable. But
Yeah.
then it's like, well, okay, wait a second.
Which came first?
It's like what comes first? But but I understand both. And there was a beautiful story that this woman told me the other day, and always go to me. It's like back to orgasm, back to intimacy, back to
Mhm.
pleasure. That like back in the day when men were gonna go out for a hunt, he would make love to his woman the night before, and she would reach these transcendent states of like orgasm and pleasure and have visions of like where the animals were gonna be. And then she would like guide the hunting party the next day and tell
Wow.
them where to go. And I was like, oh, I got chills. I'm like, we don't recognize that power in women anymore.
That's
They're
it.
not allowed to have that. And we don't recognize that hunter power in men anymore. We're not allowed to have that. So it's like,
Ugh,
where does it start? Is it required on
100%.
both ends, or is it you being able to cultivate that in yourself?
It's absolutely both, and we both have a part, and that's why I think, men's work and women's work is so important, and doing inner work together, and all we can do is focus on ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's up to us, like whoever's hearing this conversation, whoever
Yeah.
is having these conversations, whoever is, hearing the voice or the call from anywhere, is like, this is our call to be doing that work with ourselves. And, over the last 6 months, I've been really facing some like last tendrils of certain patterns for me with men, and how my armor shows up with men to protect myself. And, especially around receiving men's provision and protection and leadership when I don't like it, and I don't like the way that it's being provided, which is often the case. Like, we don't get to have it exactly the way we want it 24/7, right? And that can be confronting to still be open to receive. And Ellie's husband, Rob, is very alpha, very firm, direct, no bullshit, no coddling, no accommodating. He's very like clear, firm, direct. And we're very similar in a lot of ways. Like, we're super similar in a lot of ways. And so we've like really butt heads because like we're those same magnet sides, many times it's like repelling each other for many years, and now learning to find harmony in our relationship. And I've become way more receptive. And he's also softened his heart because, I think part of healthy masculinity is heart-centered leadership, heart-centered protection and provision, right? And so he's been more in his heart, I've been more in mine, and it showing up on the two different poles. Like, it shows up in different ways, but I've been able to receive him more. But it's sometimes not easy if like he is leading me in a way or giving me direction or advice, or that I'm judging as too harsh or too not what I'm looking for, not the direction I want to go. I can be reactive and, uncomfortable. And my default has been to react with fight, right? To react with like judgment and fighting, versus what I'm practicing now, sharing my fear, sharing my discomfort, sharing my my anxiety with where he might be leading me. And I think that is what is so powerful. What I'm really practicing and learning, and what we're also teaching so much in Desire on Fire now, is how can women be in their vulnerability and just as powerful, just as self-expressed, not about becoming a doormat. It's not about becoming passive. It's not about becoming silent or just giving up our power to men. Of course not. It's about staying in respect and appreciation and reverence and vulnerability of men and the masculine, while staying true to ourselves. And a lot of that requires excruciating vulnerability. Like, oh my God, I'm feeling so uncomfortable. I'm feeling a lot of fear that where you're leading me is going to, cause me distress or pain, or like I'm gonna lose all my money, because he's led us in certain ways in our business. And it's like, I'm afraid I'm gonna lose love. Afraid I'm gonna lose business. That I'm afraid I'm gonna lose money. That I'm not gonna be able to support myself anymore if I follow your leadership. Right? I'm feeling anxiety. I'm feeling fear. If I follow this, I won't be okay. Versus, no, I'm not going to do that. That's a stupid idea. Right? Those are very different frequencies. One's vulnerable and revealing and allows for more help and leadership, right? I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling some real hesitation here. Allows a man to keep providing and helping and re-guiding you, redirecting you, supporting you, versus fighting, judging, and what's it like, not what's the word, not hitting it down, but like when you just oh my God, what's the word when you like not hit down an idea. What's the word when you whatever. I can't think of it. Not knock it down. Not You know what I'm saying, though. When you just like,
I know exactly what you're saying. I don't think we
you
need
know what
another
I'm
word,
saying?
but
There's a word for it. When you whatever, it's like, instead of just knocking an idea, right? It's like, instead of that, it's actually opening it and revealing more instead of fighting it.
And like, what a different reaction the masculine's going to have in those two scenarios. One, for me, the vulnerable way is going to make me look at myself and my leadership and my masculinity, which is like, oh, wait a second, I have to now look at myself. Whereas if you're met with the fight, it's probably let me fight back, and then it will just probably amplify into a
100%.
unproductive scenario.
And when you get, and then in those moments, like when I'm vulnerable and you look at yourself and you could be like, okay, well, am I leading her in a way that isn't actually going to serve her? Or am I just leading her in a way that's going to make that she's just uncomfortable? And it's probably that one, but sometimes it might not be. And you get to actually check in and like, maybe let me see, am I being too demanding? Am I being a bit too forceful or aggressive in a way that's not actually serving?
Yeah.
Or am I just leading her and it is uncomfortable? And how can I be more loving to her in her discomfort,
Yeah.
and supportive in this place that she's feeling a lot of fear?
One of the things that happened in my the experience I had in initiation to becoming a man was I was shown that in my life I come from a lineage of a lot of pain in the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to feel the pain of my mother and my sisters, and way back. But then it showed me really like you've been around so many strong women in your life that you're treating women like men.
Mm-hmm.
You're like because I think they can handle it, and I think that's how
Right.
I'm supposed to treat them because they're so strong and so
And they're
independent.
teaching you that they can be treated that way, right? Both are true.
Totally. And it's okay. It's never talked about. That's just the way
Yeah.
I've treated women. But then the shift for me was like, you have to see that they are so strong and so powerful, but there's such a softness and a vulnerability that is requiring you to soften and not come so harshly at them.
Yes.
Like you need to still care. There's still a woman. There's still a whole other side to them.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, whoa, I really need to be softer. I need
Yeah.
to, yeah, not. But again, it was like my upbringing of being met with that type of energy. That's it.
Yeah.
It turned me into treating women that way.
It's such a tough line because I'm like, we need men's assertiveness. We
Hmm.
need your, balanced aggression. We need your leadership. We need your dominance. Like we do.
Yeah,
And yes, it has to be heart centered and like
yeah,
attuned to tenderness,
yeah.
right? It's
The
like,
heart centered piece for me was like that's a
that's it.
beautiful way to say it.
That's it.
Yeah,
It's like you're attuned, and that's so much of men's work. A lot of men is like, how can you love that like warrior in you, the aggressor, the
yeah,
leader, the dominant one, the all of those, like the
yeah,
power in you, like your strength, your animal,
yeah,
and learn to be integrated and attuned
yeah,
so that you come from your heart and be firm and clear with especially with a woman or with
yeah,
women, but like in also having reverence for her softness, her weakness,
yeah,
her tenderness, and like have so much space for her feelings and
yeah,
her needs, while staying like
yeah.
firm and true to who you are and what you see.
And being able to read the situation that's going on and then be able to tailor that strength. How
Yes.
soft do I need to be right now? Maybe
Yes.
maybe now you're so vulnerable and I really have to go like very very soft and open, and other experiences will require yeah, more firmness.
Yeah.
So to be able to tune into your partner and read the energy of the situation, I think is just another way of saying being heart centered.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. Attuned, connected to the space, connected to the environment, and
Yeah,
that is a big part of a conscious relating, is actually being able to tune into the situation and what's needed.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I can see the other way of like men just learning those traits and
Yeah.
not learning to be heart centered. How
Yes.
easily we could get carried away, and then feeling attacked by women and feeling blamed by women. Also, I'm sure it just amplifies uh, us checking out and just holding on to something that we have, which could be our aggression or our leadership.
Totally. It's like one way or the other. Like if you're
Yeah,
feeling, dismissed or um
yeah,
demeaned or whatever by women, then it's easy to either default to being passive and
hmm
kind of like not really caring and being sort of flaccid in life, or the opposite, right? Use it
yeah,
overexerting control and
yeah,
feeling like you need to have power over because you feel out of control if a woman's being so
yeah,
demanding or ungrateful or right,
yeah,
dismissive or disrespectful. Yeah. And so we all have a part in creating harmony and like a beautiful circuitry of love
hmm
and connection and
hmm
allowing for our differences and our different strengths,
hmm
and appreciating them.
How do you take people into this pool? Like, how do you, like, what are the first, because in just in the human design community and other communities I'm a part of that's missing this stuff, like,
Yeah.
what's your step one of getting women interested and then getting men interested?
Yeah. Um, Well, I would say like funnel wise, in Desire on Fire, we definitely, I mean, we have like, we have a podcast, the Desire on Fire podcast, and
Yeah.
we just ran a 5-day virtual event that we do every year called the Feminine Revolution. So that's a way that like women can dip their toe in and kind of learn about these conversations and paradigms. And we have an 8-week course that's starting in a couple weeks called Radiant Woman. And so we have like a slow progression journey that women can go on, because it can be very intense and jarring. And there is a lot of trauma that comes up, and pain and fear and mechanisms that we have to like work with and be loving with as we grow and heal and learn to soften. And we have more advanced retreats and programs. We have a weekend coming up at June 7th through 9th. I don't know when this is coming out, but for women of all levels of experience in this world. And that's a powerful way to like immerse in community with women and do some practices and embodiment and experiential healing work around relationships with women, relationships with men, our own sensuality. So that's how Ellie and I love to do it, having different opportunities and different platforms and ways for people to receive this kind of information, to be in these conversations, to consider these new different ways of looking at the world and relationships. Men, I think, have generally a harder time investing in this kind of work, because I think a lot of your conditioning gets in the way of that. Like, I don't need help. I don't need to do the work. Everything's fine. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to figure out the answers by myself. Like, I think there's a lot of that, like conditioning and, protective mechanisms that show up that way for men. So I found that it tends to be harder to invite men or have men be more receptive to getting help and doing this kind of work together, but they love it just as much as women when they do. I'm really happy. We have 25 men in our men's program right now, our 4-month men's program, which is amazing. And like, it took a lot of work to get those men. And considering that we have thousands of women in our community, like to have 25 men is like, it's a huge feat. And it's also like 25 compared to thousands, like it's like both are true. And we've been on a journey with how to incorporate, bringing men into our work and doing free things for men and doing like lower cost things that involve men. And, this program is a higher ticket investment because it's a way deeper dive. It's like major, intense, deep inner work, and then also an in-person weekend. So there's different ways to get involved. I mean, certainly we're not the only teachers. There's incredible teachers and leaders and coaches in this field. I think what we're doing at Desire on Fire is super unique, bringing in a lot of different like sacred sexuality work and empowerment for women, and also the loving men work and having respect and reverence for the masculine, and also bringing eros and sexuality work together. And like, it's kind of a beautiful blend of many different schools of thought and methodologies and communities that we weave together in one. And same with our men's work and men's program, and what we'll be doing with individuals and couples in the future. So I certainly want anyone who's interested to get in touch, follow us on Instagram, listen to the podcast, reach out if you're interested in doing programs. And, whether it's with us or not, like if you are interested in this kind of conversation, there are incredible, endless resources around, intimacy work and polarity work and healing the divide between men and women and the masculine and feminine, and inner child work and internal family systems, parts work, and different somatic healing modalities. There's just so much work that we can be doing, and not as like a daunting thing. There's just like beautiful, endless resources available to us, retreats, in-person programs, virtual programs, like, practices, coaching, like so much available to us, which I feel so grateful for. Like, and like the resources and opportunities are endless and available to us if we're willing to open to receive them and learn from different sources.
Yeah. Well, that's what I absolutely love about you and Ellie, and the stuff that you guys do, is it is a synthesis of your own personal experiences and exploration that you've created your own medicine, and it's just so refreshing, and it's not homogenized. It's not a normal approach by any means. So when I look at human design, it's the same thing. It's a synthesis of these ancient wisdoms that have been around forever. So we do live in such an amazing time of information and the resources we have available. What would you say is like maybe one or a few of like the major fears that you see people have, uh, um, that make them not want to go here, or keep them from exploring these different modalities?
I think fear being like having to reveal what's really going on in their lives gets in the way for some people. Like they don't want to have to admit what feels vulnerable to them or what they're dealing with or what they're struggling with. A lot of people just want to keep it light and polite. They want to keep it love and light. They want to keep it like on the surface, or they don't want to, their pride gets in the way. Like, I don't want to look bad. I don't want to look like there's an issue in my marriage. Things like that can get in the way. People's religious shame can get in the way, or different kinds of like cultural shame, or things that block them from admitting their hunger, their desire, their interest in sexuality work or intimacy work. Also their paradigm around money and investing in themselves. So many people have never invested in themselves around inner growth work, or especially around sexuality work. Like they may have broken through into a new paradigm around like spending money on themselves, if it's like business related or money related, or like general personal development and like goals, because it feels justified. But then when it's about relationships and sex and intimacy and sisterhood, it's like, what, I can't spend hundreds of dollars on that, or thousands of dollars of that on that, or tens of thousands of dollars on that. Like, that's just my love life. But arguably, and like, this is what we absolutely believe and stand for, is that, our relationships, especially our intimate relationships, are the foundation of our lives, and really are the thing that most inform our happiness and our satisfaction and level of joy and connection in our lives. And so to us, it is, to me and Ellie, and to me for sure, it is absolutely the thing most worth investing in. Because if we're happy, connected, if our relationships and our sex is like hot and harmonious and aligned and on fire, and we're feeling good, like that impacts everything. That totally impacts work, business, money, relationships with family, your parents, even, like everything adjusts. When our romantic and intimate relationships are feeling good, and ultimately, number one, our relationship with ourselves.
Beautifully said. In the human design world, we look at the sacral center, and that's where wealth is generated. That's where intimacy is generated. That's where, all the major patterns of our lives are generated from the sacral, which is where desire lives. So that's why since I've been on this path with you, I'm just like, everybody should start here. Like, we should all start here. And then it's going to be so much easier to transform your life and have everything come to you.
Totally.
But it's just so fucking scary because of the conditioning that's placed on all this stuff.
Yes.
The shame and the
It definitely tends to be a later stop on the train for people, because they might feel more comfortable with like spirituality work, or plant medicine even, or like meditation work, or cacao ceremonies, or like breath work, or, one-to-one coach around goals. Like those things might feel a bit more like attainable and like accessible, and like, but then sexuality and like deep rooted patterns around intimacy, and like going to your trauma with men and your lineage of pain around what gets in the way of your relationships with men, and in your sex life, and what blocks you from pleasure, and the physical pain stored in the body, or trauma stored in the body that needs to be healed. And I get the fear, and it's so fucking worth it. It's so worth it to move past and through that discomfort of that threshold in order to let yourself have this healing work.
High risk, high reward.
Right.
It is like the greatest like stadium that you could walk into and get ready to do battle with your shadows and but the other great thing I love about it, I'm like telling people, we call it the not self in human design. It's just like your shadow or ego or whatever. I'm like, if you really want to confront that part of yourself, it will show up so quickly and so vividly and so obviously when you're dealing with a sexual or intimate situation. It's like,
Totally.
it just is the perfect mirror for you to get comfortable and see the toxic patterns that are playing out in your life.
Yeah. You have to face yourself in those situations. Yeah. I sadly have to end this because I have another call.
Shocker.
I know.
I'll put your chart in the link too, so we can see. We didn't talk about that at all, but you're a busy woman with your sisterhood, and
yes.
Thank you so much. We'll have to do this again, and I'm just always fired up to be around you and appreciate the work that you're doing in the world. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Travis. Yeah, I feel the same. Love you so much.
Love
Thank
you.
you.
All right.